Welcome to the CMO Spotlight, and I'm so pleased to be here with Shonodeep Modak, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for the Energy Management Division of Schneider Electric. So welcome, Shonodeep.
Joe, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, I'm so excited to have this conversation. So Schneider Electric is a big global company. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the company structure and then a little more about the Energy Management Division where you're responsible for marketing.
Yeah. So I would say Schneider is a global specialist in digitization of energy and automation. So we're in both the energy management and the automation space. So automation of your buildings and factories. We're in your homes. One out of every 2 to 3 homes has Schneider in the home. We are in almost every data center. We're a world leader in the data center side. We're a leader in infrastructure and airports and factories. So we're pretty much present in all spaces wherever energy is used or consumed, and we've been in the business for more than 200 years. Global player, mainly. We have no major headquarters. We're at 3 hubs across the world: Boston, Paris, and then Hong Kong, and then that's slowly expanding into India as well too. So we're kind of geographically decentralized, which is actually one of our strengths. And so we've been on this transformation to be more services oriented, more digital, more sustainable. Not only do we trying to live our talk around reducing our carbon footprint, but also we're in the business of selling sustainability and helping our clients become more sustainable with power purchase agreements, with energy management solutions, measurement systems, consulting that helps our customers. And we were the #1 most sustainable company a couple of years back, in fact.
Wow. Okay. And I know you've been there a little over 5 years now, and now you went from being in charge of marketing for North America, just as a region, to now you're in charge of marketing for energy management globally. So tell us about what the energy management group does that's different from some of the other divisions.
Yeah. So we have, so energy management is about 80% of the turnover of Schneider, and it is made up of different divisions inside. So we have our digital energy business, which covers buildings mainly. We have our data center business that covers, IT infrastructure. We have our secure power business. We have our home and distribution business, which is exactly what the word is. Then we have power systems and power products that are basically larger, low voltage, medium voltage sort of solutions that help in the power distribution and management from the grid all the way to the building. So we're in all those different spaces. And then we're also a division that has sustainability solutions. So consulting, like I mentioned earlier, and some of our sustainability resource management solutions. So that is basically the core of energy management. We're also in software, where it's related to the design, build, and construction of a building and the operations. So that is another place. So it's a pretty big division or big business. And then across our other counterpart is industrial automation. And then we're also into what we call innovation at the edge, which is more of our newer sort of systems and solutions that's kind of being incubated right now.
And publicly traded company, I assume?
Correct.
And so total revenue for all of Schneider-ish?
Yeah, it's about 33 billion euros, I think, of the latest 2022 numbers. Correct.
Wow, okay. And with the euro right now, I guess in US dollars, it's somewhat comparable to US dollars-ish. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. And then so talk about your role as CMO and maybe tell us a little bit about your team and what your responsibility is as CMO.
So being part of the business team versus the region team. So the region is responsible for animating the messages into the marketplace. So pushing the paid media, the advertising behind it. And then also they're responsible for making sure that messages that are created globally are then localized and resonate with our local customers and audiences, and making sure we drive the highest brand visibility, digital engagement, and then of course that we're helping impact the business positively. On my side, which is the division side, we're responsible for understanding in depth the needs and pain points of the customers, owning the entire understanding of those needs for each segment and channel partner that we have, or segment and channel partner grouping that we have. Then coming up with thought leadership that's going to hopefully attract and engage them, keep them in, and then bring them into the funnel of learning, as well as understanding what all we can offer. And then finally, with demand gen programs that we feed back to the countries. So that's kind of our remit on our side. And then of course, all product launches, et cetera, that we have.
So roughly how big is the team, your team that's focused on those things ish?
Yeah. Yeah, my team's close to 200 people, and then of course we have indirect teams that on outside, for example, our independent software businesses where they plug in, etc. So we have other sort of plug-in leaders that come into energy management.
Cool. All right. I want to talk briefly about your career path because you spent your first, I think it was 4.5, 5 years at Downstream Products. Then you spent almost 8 years at ExxonMobil and then 10 years at GE. So just tell us about that path
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how that flow went.
yeah. Just a correction. Downstream Products was part of ExxonMobil, so those 8 years were included.
Oh,
So no worries.
and wait, and you were a chemical engineering undergrad and
Yeah,
then got your MBA after
yeah.
that.
So what the heck happened to me? Well, I
Yeah,
realized
right.
chemical engineer, I would probably, you wouldn't want me necessarily in your plant because I was always too curious about things and I might be tinkering around too much in a petrochemical plant. But actually, I found a love for helping customers and clients through an internship, basically engineer solutions for them and help them with, hey, we can optimize this and that will help bring your costs down or improve efficiency. And that's kind of been the thread of my whole entire career is analytics to understanding a customer needs to then being able to provide a solution that's quantifiable. So I'm a kind of a data geek, and I've been doing that from my first company, which was ExxonMobil. I joined technical sales to do just that. From technical sales, Exxon moved me into a number of different roles, from finance to controllership to marketing, which is what I loved, and I'll maybe tell you some stories around that. And then lastly, the operations side. Then I joined GE. I finished my MBA, joined GE. They actually had a leadership program for MBAs that had some sort of industrial background knowledge. And so I joined GE in a leadership program, shifted from there into different businesses. So from a power generation, smaller power generation, reciprocating engines. So, you have a landfill, it generates gas from it. You plug it into a generator, you make renewable energy, for example. Then I moved from there into our services business. So that taught me a lot about selling products that aren't physical. So a service contract and remote monitoring. To then the last role that I had was in the industrial solutions business, which was in the energy management space. That business was sold. During that time, I found Schneider and joined Schneider in the regional role for North America, and then now this energy management business role.
Very cool. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you either wish you'd gotten early in your career or maybe one you would give to somebody who's just starting out their marketing career.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, being realizing that when you're starting in your career, everybody has this idea that everybody wants to be CEO and wants to be like this go-getter, and you feel like you're competing against everybody. But it's interesting as life changes and your life stages change. That's not the roadmap for everyone. And so where you start being highly competitive, I would have probably have, if I had known that, I would have been less focused on trying to be competitive with others and more just around what skills or what sort of areas of learning do I want to really nurture and thrive in. And so, yes, I got some of it on along the way, when it came to analytics, for example, or it came to marketing and digital marketing. But I think you don't have to be so competitive with everybody. Yes, you want to be a stellar team player, but not necessarily this. I've got to make sure I outwit my peer.
That's great advice. They're those people that you think you're competing with will probably become your allies as you progress in your career.
Exactly. And their interests change, your interests change too. So, and that knowing that I think can provide a lot of value to the younger people starting off.
I love that. So I believe that everybody has a superpower, and I'm curious what you've been told your superpower is, or what you think your superpower is.
Yeah, I think curiosity would definitely be my superpower because whenever somebody reports, hey, we did great in this marketing program, or this is, we're using AI for this. I go and I just ask a lot of questions and try to understand how it actually worked. It's kind of like taking things apart, almost like back to my story about being an engineer. So, or in a plant. So that one I would say is what always kind of keeps me going and understanding something one level deeper.
That's great. So Are there certain values that you either want to demonstrate to your team, or maybe you would even demand from somebody to be a part of your team?
Yeah, I want them to do the same, honestly. I mean, not that I'm wanting everybody to be programmed like me, but because you're not just accepting the status quo, like you're not just finishing a campaign. Let's go back to marketing. You're not just finishing a marketing campaign, just administrating it all the way through just to get numbers that you report on a dashboard, that you understand how you got there and you understand what worked well, what didn't, so you can apply it to the next time. We don't do that enough. I think most marketers in large organizations don't do that enough. I think that's what we have to, that's what I want to impart.
Great. So I'm curious how you find inspiration either for yourself or for your team.
Yeah, I would say the thrill of the customer hunt and the engagement, and when you've shown them something they didn't know, that if it wasn't from your marketing efforts, it wouldn't have happened. Because in many cases, the sales team is awesome. They don't have the ability to have that bandwidth and touch every diffuse customer that we have. However, we can see all of that, and when we can reach them and we see the engagement and see them opening up something, being curious, making a request, either making a purchase or making a kind of a request to a salesperson, that is the thrill. It's almost like a hunt in a way to be able to engage them, and especially now, I will say, more than just the selfishness of a marketer, the fact that in the space that we're in Schneider is quite unique because we're involved in helping decarbonize the planet. Energy is the biggest vector for decarbonization. 80% of the emissions, CO2, comes from energy. We're in the space of energy, so we have I think a right and a responsibility to help bring the customers into saying, wow, I didn't know I could do that, and that would reduce my energy footprint or my carbon footprint.
That's cool. Well, and with great responsibility comes with great power comes great responsibility. With great energy distribution and management comes great responsibility as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to talk for a second about agencies, because here at Setup we think a lot about agencies. Our focus is on helping marketers thrive by connecting them with the right resources, whether those be people or agencies. And so we live in that space between clients and brands and agencies. We're neither of those, but we live in the space in between. And so we have kind of a unique perspective. And so I'm curious, generally, either at Schneider Electric or in your previous lives, how you like to work with agencies.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think, while we pride ourselves in being able to originate the ideas, the agencies have the value of seeing the best practices and across the clients that they support. And in many cases, they bring back a new level of creativity or new ideas that we would not have been able to generate in our small space in the energy side. So that is number one, first and foremost. And then, of course, the ability to scale up and scale down where we don't necessarily have that ability to do so as fast.
Yeah, and so often we think about the marketing functions. If you think about the different disciplines of marketing, are there certain disciplines that you feel we need to own as core functions within Schneider Electric, and then there are other functions or disciplines that you feel, we could really benefit from having external perspective?
Yeah.
Or expertise.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Certainly we should be owning the expertise around understanding the energy space and the dynamics and the trends and everything else. And then, of course, how our products and solutions actually work. Like, we shouldn't be asking an agency to help tell us what our value prop is. So that definitely should be our responsibility. I think also we should be able to have the ownership with the client relationships or the customers, and to be able to go and do research with them and bring back insights from that research, et cetera. Like, I'd like us to do to where we can own that. Maybe the execution of that can be the agency. The other piece I could value the agency on is, beyond execution, is around bringing this, call it new creative ideas, new creative visuals, and maybe even new ways to use, especially there's some agencies that have these really cool abilities to say, all right, I want to go target this type of audience. Here is the trends and things that they're searching for, and bringing us the insights back, because they have those systems that are actually, so when they're doing, like, for example, when you're doing media buying, you're trying to target certain people, but you're also that same data can be turned right around and be able to show us, here's what people are searching for now. And then I can say, well, give me this geography, of course, where you find them, but then I can find ways to then use those signals to help make better content.
I love that. Yeah, we often say that the reason that you hire an agency is either capacity issues where you just don't have enough arms and legs to do the work you're trying to accomplish, or a capability challenge where you're just like, look, we're experts at these 10 things, but
Yeah.
there are these other 2 things where we could bring in an outside expert like an agency to support us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I will say
Yeah.
something around agencies that I would like, especially as you have them in your network and maybe they're listening to this podcast, but is, when you're trying to sell your services, typically the agencies will bring their A team and you'll be blown away by the A team.
Yeah.
And then you're onboarded with the C team, and then you're like, what
Yeah.
happened? What's the disconnect here? I was sold on the A team, but I don't have the same A team anymore.
You never see them again.
Right.
Yeah, we see that sometimes, and we have generally found that the larger the agency, the more likely that is to occur, because sometimes the smaller agencies aren't big enough to have a
Yeah.
B or C
Yeah.
team. But yes, we definitely see a little bit of a bait and switch from some agencies where they show the A team and then you get the B
Yes.
team.
Yes.
And then sometimes it also depends on just how big a client are you in their pool of clients, because if you're an important client, then you get the best resources, and if you're less important to them financially, then sometimes you don't.
Exactly.
We think about all these things a lot, Shonodeep. We're worried about
I'm
them.
glad you
We
do.
talk about them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, just as marketers, we often work with the non-marketing functions of our organization. And for some reason, everybody thinks they're a marketer in some cases and wants to be a part of marketing because it seems like fun. But I'm curious how you demonstrate the value of marketing to those non-marketing functions within the organization.
Yeah. I mean, big things are like how we're able to, for example, if we're getting in a new space, for example, how we're able to open awareness up and measure that we've increased awareness on this target audience that you need to be able to make a purchase, as well as being able to show the digital interactions, the relationships that we're able to build digitally, where I can say, hey, Joe Koufman was reading and downloaded this particular white paper. Then he went to the website and researched this product. And then he went to customer support and asked to be contacted by. I love those sort of things where they're like, oh, wow, I see the ROI, what you do in marketing. And then I say, I didn't do that one time. I didn't do that with one Joe. I did that with 10,000 Joes all at once.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, that's the power of marketing. Now, the other piece of it is the ROI, which is where we still have to get better on, which is being able to say, for every $1 marketing you put in, this is what you get out of it. Maybe not always in terms of product sales, but on these other metrics that we have to be able to show it every time consistently.
So here's a curveball question related to that then. It's easier to demonstrate that for, an ROI based campaign or program. How do you demonstrate that for brand building or things that are, where there's not a direct line to the effort to the actual customer or sale?
Yeah, much harder to do. And obviously you got to have some level of faith in your leadership that they understand the value, and you have to show them that, by doing that, you can imagine top brands when they can just call up. My story is, I imagine when I was at GE, I could just call, a procurement officer or procurement leader in a company and say, I'm a GE, have something I have something I want to talk to you about. Because of that brand, it opens the door immediately, versus another brand that maybe doesn't have that same level of awareness, and you have to really work. I'd say, wouldn't it be, imagine if that was effortless, where you could get the meeting at the highest level possible without it. And I said, so that's the value. Now we have to push that into the marketplace, and then being able to measure unaided awareness and all the brand measurements that we have. So and of course, the best thing is when customers, like our senior leadership gets an outreach because they're like, hey, I saw this article that was written in Fortune, and you're like, okay, good, that's where it's making a difference. So that's
right. It's not a direct line to a sale, but it's,
right.
Hey, our indirect marketing efforts and our brand work has led to some action of some kind.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if there's a program or a campaign or something, either at Schneider Electric or GE or ExxonMobil or previous life, which taught you some very valuable lesson, either because it was a miserable flop and you just learned something really important, or it was a huge success, something that you may want to emulate in the future.
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. So One of the biggest successes, actually, still, I still love to talk about this. Is when I told you I was going to say it earlier, was in my Exxon days. And this was in 2000. I'll go way back now on you, 2007, 2008. So we had the internet then, but there was the first, the International Panel for Climate Change came up and said there is a problem called global warming, and all of a sudden there was this new awareness of CO2 that was, that we had to do something to help reduce it in the atmosphere. And all this great data pointed to all these things. And so the government starts putting together things like, hey, you need to increase your fuel economy standard. We need to, roll up your windows on your car when you're driving. And then, of course, gas prices were going up. We started to see proliferation of hybrids. And then I managed to stumble when I was working on the marketing side, in market intelligence. I started to see that there was a trend of all these different tips and tools to help improve your fuel economy. One of them was actually published by the government, which is going to a thinner viscosity motor oil. And I don't know if I told you the story before, but I capitalized on it, and I found that there was we had a racing formulation that actually was a thinner viscosity, sold at a very premium price, sold maybe $1 million worth a year. But I said, why can't we rebrand that as a fuel economy improving motor oil? And I took that, I created this whole analysis, took it to leadership. They said, that's great, Shonodeep. However, we're an oil company, and if you do this, then we're going to reduce our demand for oil. So I said, well, yes, you'd make less money, but imagine you could now capitalize on hitting a new market. You bring a new tangible benefit for the product. And so it actually took a meeting with Walmart where they became very interested in our annual business review. They became very interested in the concept of it when I presented it to them at the and I guess this is where you have to have some level of grit, because I was told not to go and present it, but I went ahead and did present it, and they loved it, and they said they wanted in all their stores, all package styles, and that's what drove the commercialization of the product. Lo and behold, now if you open up your car, I bet you it'll say 0W20 on it, especially if you have a newer car. And if you go to Walmart, you'll see, or any auto parts store or thing, that 0W20 is the #1 selling SKU now. And we were the first entrant, and that helped move the company in a massive position, many, many years ago. So that was a big success story. That kind of was had to fight through it, but yeah.
I love that. I love it when I hear about marketers who are able to have an impact on product. Often we've had a lot of these conversations with CMOs of restaurants, and restaurant CMOs are really responsible for menu and deciding what goes on the menu and gets off the menu. But if this is a case where you helped impact the actual product mix because of a trend that you were seeing in market research and things like that. So it sounds like you also maybe had a flop you want to talk about too, or no?
Yeah, let's think about flops. I would say we did it was our new home automation system, energy management system called Sense, or called Wiser. And it was in partnership with a company called Sense that you can go and look on Amazon today. And the Wiser solution, you can go buy it on Amazon. I think what we did was, when we introduced the product, we put a lot of money behind it, and we were trying to drive sales into Home Depot and into our retail centers and our partners, and it never took off. And I think the problem was that only after we spent all the money pushing all the advertising out to consumers, we then went back and looked at the actual journey, and we saw that we never explained how it worked and what it really was. We kind of jumped the gun into like, hey, you can help manage your energy better, but we never explained how. And I think when you look at a lot of successful, smart home device companies, the ones that are really successful explain how it works, and of course what it does, and gives those actual scenarios to you in the demo of the product, versus just like, hey, now I can manage my energy better. And so I think we've learned from that, especially now with more consumer products that we're launching, to be more focused on the how, and then of course what it is, very, very bold and blatant, and making sure that that we're checking and measuring how people are consuming that information again and again, versus pushing the campaign out there and waiting until the results are at the end of the year. So that was a big learning for us. We're not a consumer, as much of a consumer marketer as a lot of the other guys are.
Well, I was going to say, what you're highlighting too is that there is a major difference between B2C and B2B, even though at the end of the day, we're all still trying to convince a person to take an action.
Yeah.
But the consumer is a different kind of the type of message that resonates with a consumer is different than the kind of message that resonates in the B2B
Yeah. Very much so.
environment.
Very much so.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to a couple of fun questions to wrap things up.
Okay.
The first is there a sports team or a quote or a book or a movie or a band that inspires you? And what is it about that thing that inspires you most?
You know, I don't have a quote really off the top of my head, but I will say that I recently saw Seal. They came to Atlanta.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago or a week ago, and I was absolutely blown away. First of all, how young he looks after after so many years. But secondly, how he brought this message in all of his songs about how there was some pain, but then you had to kind of endure, but also kind of bring love back into the equation and being kind, and whether or not you were crying or whether or not you were crazy or whatever else he had in his song themes, how every one of them, I was like, wow, he's so consistent on that. So I think the consistency piece is a big important fact. And of course, coming up with ways to break through in different songs was a kind of a neat thing that he does. And it's still so relevant today. I mean, it's not like you felt like, oh wow, these are songs from the 80s. It could have been, it's timeless. His music seemed to be very timeless.
That's cool. I like that as an example because certainly I think musicians and artists probably do the best job of creating brand around themselves and he obviously did a great job. And also you should know that none of us are ever going to survive unless we're a little bit crazy.
Well said. Well done.
Thanks. So I'm curious, outside of your family, where you find joy? Do you have any hobbies or things like that?
Oh yeah. No, besides the family, I mean, right now, obviously kids are getting into the early teens, preteens, and so their activity is just exploded. So I like to ride bikes around the neighborhood, especially now with just the weather getting so much nicer outside. That's number one, just trying to, be healthy, but also just nice to see all these, everybody out and kind of out and about and just see your neighbors. The bike gives you the fastest way to do it without running out of energy too soon. And then I've been loving doing design work on just, we've got some basement projects going on. So just getting involved with like designing all the cabinetry. And, I was like, I'm in market, I could do PowerPoint. So just trying it myself out, playing around with it, looking at other ideas, bringing it back and, putting it all in my own virtual sort of zone and then hopefully making it a reality soon. So
Wow.
keeping me busy.
Well, you'll have to send us photos of the finished product and we'll determine whether you're a good designer or not, or if your design's translated. So I guess my last question is there a brand that you've never worked on that you really admire? And what is it about that brand that you admire the most?
Well, I've recently come across, because of sustainability, come across L'Oreal. So L'Oreal has, being probably one of the best examples of a responsible marketer for no greenwashing or limited greenwashing or no greenwashing, I should say, around their products and their benefits. And what they've been able to do is point the product benefits straight back to science. So for every dose of shampoo I put on my head, here's how much it uses for water. Here's how much the carbon footprint was. Here's what the toxicity is. It goes back into the ground. I mean, all these different dimensions, they rate it as well. And they have a whole science behind it that points back to their environmental product disclosure. So fully transparent end to end. They make it very easy for a customer to understand. Definitely take a look at their website. You'll see the scoring. And it's just such a nice, clean way to do it. And it makes you feel like, they're not trying to just greenwash and, paint some picture that this product goes over the top. I think we all have to be responsible marketers now. Whether or not we want to or not, we have to be regulated. We're going to be regulated, but then it's also our responsibility to tell the story of what people can use and do, but do it in a way that is completely transparent, that is credible. So the customer is not going to be, especially put in a bad predicament where they thought they were going to get something and they don't.
Yeah. Well, and I also love that you chose a brand that has traditionally been known to mostly focus on women, but obviously they've got slew of products that are not women-focused products.
Absolutely.
And the fact that their environmental footprint, obviously it's something you think about a lot and care about a lot, but that's the differentiator is how transparent and communicative they are about the, that whole process. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to see what they've done and how vocal they've been. Now they've been at it now for about probably 10 years or so. So they got a jump start, but that was the right move, and now they're benefiting from having such a clear message.
Well, and you're bringing up one other thing that's a kind of a nice quote. Like it's never the wrong thing to do the right thing,
Yeah,
and that's the right thing. Yeah,
for sure.
excellent. Well, Shonodeep Modak is the Chief Marketing Officer for the Energy Management Division of Schneider Electric. Shonodeep, this has been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for the opportunity, and always great to catch up with you, Joe.